We are finally at that point in the year where we can be enjoying our harvest, and this week it's time to get our gloves on and getting down and dirty, digging up our potatoes. This year the season have certainly been very interesting in terms of our weather, and actually it's quite amazing that it is just around 12 weeks since I sowed my seed potatoes. Now I have a variety of first, second and main crop, and actually around 12 weeks it is about the time to be getting up our first and our second earlies. However, we don't really go by timing, we go by what our foliage is doing. So what you might notice is on some of your potato plants you may be getting some of this browning, which is your systemic browning, which means that the chlorophyll in those leaves, that green stuff which helps with photosynthesis, is actually just going to stop, and it means that our potatoes just aren't going to grow anymore. Now for some potatoes you might actually find some flowers, but not every single potato variety flowers. So if you're waiting for flowers to happen, look at the foliage. That is what is going to tell you that your potatoes are ready. So you can already see the different colour variations in my foliage, with my first early certainly getting that lighter yellow with that chlorophyll dying off and the brown edges. Try not to panic thinking that that is blight, the blight word. We're not quite in that season yet, although it is on its way, and there is a difference between them. So very simply what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up these first earlies this week and probably the seconds next week, and maybe leaving, depending on what the foliage is doing, my main crop for another week. And all I'm going to do, because this row here was actually my no dig bed, is I'm just going to actually put my fork into the ground a little bit, just so I can get under the plant, and I'm going to pull the stems until I can see some absolutely glorious potatoes underneath. Now there are a variety of sizes, so I'm just going to pick off the larger ones and pop those into a bucket. What you may find is some green potatoes. Now the green potatoes are green because they have been exposed to the light, and they are not very good for you. So I'm going to put those into a different container with all of my foliage, which I'm not going to put into my compost. Now there's a lot of different advice and ideas about this. Obviously if you have blight, do not put that into your compost, but what you will find is you will find some tiny little potatoes which maybe haven't come to maturity, and if you put those in your compost heap, they are going to love it, and what you're going to get is volunteer potatoes, or a whole load of potatoes growing in your compost. It's quite nice to get additional freebies, but not necessarily what you want. So I'm going to put those over there. Now after I've actually pulled up that main plant, I'm then going to have a bit of a dig around, because you may find some more, there's one, little hidden potatoes in your soil. And again, trying to avoid leaving any potatoes in the ground, because again you're going to end up with volunteer plants, which are great, but if you're thinking about doing a rotation crop, they will be popping up everywhere, and before you know it, you've got potatoes where you don't really want them next year, and that can really spoil what your plans are when you are looking at your planting. So if you do have flowers on your potatoes, what you need to be looking out for is something which is called the potato berries. Now potato berries do look like tomatoes, and that's because they are all a part of the nightshade family. However, unlike our tomatoes, our potato berries are poisonous, so you cannot eat them. What you could do, if you really wanted to, is use them as seeds to grow on. However, you will be waiting about 3 or 4 years before you're going to get any potatoes from a potato berry. So best thing again is just to discard those. Now when you're digging up your potatoes, you may come across this very mushy browny looking potato. That is actually your old seed, and again, discard that. You do not want that to be in your storage bag when you come to storing your potatoes themselves. So when it comes to storage, quite often people will put them into Hessian bags, but I have a real problem with Hessian bags because they do allow a certain amount of light in, and if you allow light into your potatoes as they are storing, then they could either start chitting really early or start sort of going greeny or actually rotting. So I always use a double thickness cardboard bag, put my potatoes in there, seal them up, and for my first earlies are probably going to last about 2 to 3 months, and my main crop may even potentially take me up to Christmas. In addition to that, when you're coming to storing, also just check your potatoes in case you have speared any when you are digging them up, which is why I get down on my hands and knees, or if there is actually any bruising or slight rotting on the potatoes, because again, if they go into your bags, what's going to happen is they will affect your whole store of crops. So potatoes, it is like digging for gold, and it is time to be looking at your foliage, seeing what your plants are telling you, and seeing about getting these absolute beauties out of the ground.